Security issues in the cloud, that was the question. There's a lot, obviously. There's a lot to discuss. Because of those different types of cloud, right? It depends on the cloud solution as to how severe the security question is, right? So if we're talking about that infrastructure as a service, kind of that bottom level, where you have your own servers, but just in a different facility, then I would argue that it's probably as secure or more secure than being in your location. For example, we had a client or a prospect that hit us up to put their servers in the cloud because they kept getting broken into. They're like, we just want it out of here. And most of these data centers have to be compliant for so many different things. HIPAA compliant, URAC compliant, GLBA, SOX, you name it. If you go to the data center that's up in Swanee, they've got like these giant cement pillars out front so you can't drive like a van through with a bomb or anything. The whole thing, biometric access everywhere. It's crazy. It's going to be a lot more secure. If we're talking software as a service or what they call a multi-tenant environment, yeah, there's security issues there. Because basically, the easiest way to think about what we call multi-tenant solutions are, for example, think about like an apartment, right? Apartment building. It's got several apartments in it, right? So if you were like, say, for example, you're running hosted Exchange and that's what you have, and you don't have your own dedicated Exchange server, your particular set of accounts sits in one of those apartments in that apartment building, but you're actually sharing the same exact resources, hard drive space, processor, RAM, as other tenants in that building. And there are security issues with that. That's something you have to think about. In regards to marketing and protecting proprietary information, that's absolutely a very valid concern. And that's still an area that irks a lot of CTOs and CIOs, is they don't want protected intellectual property out in the wild. So it depends on the kind of cloud technologies you're talking about. Each one has its own set of security issues, is the short answer. What else?
Isn't it likely that a good cloud vendor is going to do a better job on security than the average small and mid-sized business?
You would think so. And that's another thing I would say too, is if the company that you're looking at for cloud, the question was, would it be, is it safe to assume that cloud vendors are inherently more secure? Is that the correct kind of paraphrasing? I would say in most cases, yes, especially the larger the company, maybe with the exception of Facebook in terms of privacy. But Google, all these other guys, they have way too much to lose if your stuff gets in the wild. And Google, if you go back and research their history, they've come under fire for some privacy stuff before, but if you go back and research their history, they have a long-standing history of standing up to the government and to lots of other people that have wanted access to their stuff. So the more established the player, I think the more safe they are. Don't go with somebody who's brand new, getting their start at this. I think reputation and having been around for a while, which in the IT world is probably more than 2 years, is a way to go. So the question was, what's the future of companies like mine given all this cloud stuff? Is that really the simplest way to put it? This conversation comes up at all of the managed IT services conferences. It's still coming up. The short answer is embrace it or die. Embrace the cloud or die. Our clients are looking for help. The widget, as my VP of technology likes to often say, is irrelevant. Our clients are looking for help. They're looking for advice. Because at the end of the day, even if it's in the cloud, they still don't necessarily understand what it takes to get that information there, to manage it, to keep it secure. So, you can resell it. You can do a pass-through relationship and just consult on it. I think some of the more commoditized and easier services are probably going to come out of our hands. I think email is the first such situation. Google Apps, hosted Exchange, they're like that's kind of a self-service, slap on the cloud. And you know what, frankly, as far as email goes, I'm kind of happy to get rid of that. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of happy that I don't have to really do a whole lot of Exchange database maintenance anymore or any of that crap. I'm totally happy to get rid of that. So I think it's embrace it or die. That's really my philosophy. And I think also look for new revenue streams. That's what we're doing. We're basically saying we want to own every piece of data in the office. Anything that passes a TCP/IP packet. So we're talking voice over IP. We're talking obviously computers and servers and workstations. We're talking tablets. We're talking video conferencing, regulatory compliance, email archival, email encryption. Compliance is a huge one that I think a lot of MSPs overlook. All kinds of stuff. There's other ways to build revenue streams in our business. Absolutely. if it's already happening. The question was Blackberries. You know, there's a whole international community that's using them. What's going to happen to them? They are dead or dying. I'm not making that up. You can go look at the market, mobile market share, and Android's already dominating. BlackBerry's hemorrhaging users, probably by the day. When you're talking antivirus, you're still having to, I don't know that there's necessarily a cloud antivirus because it's still sitting on a server. Remember, cloud is just kind of the same equipment but parked somewhere else, unless we're talking software as a service. So the antivirus component would have to sit where the client accesses it. So as data comes in from the cloud, it scans it and says this data is okay, this information is okay, and it's clean, or it's not, whichever the case may be. Yeah, so, and all of the major vendors are, you know, they have mobile antivirus out now. AVG, Symantec, Sophos. I would say any of those top three are good. We use Sophos personally, but, you know, the moral of that story really is get some kind of protection. Anything is better than nothing. Yeah, did. The question was, do we see any shifts in terms of the, I guess, the IT job market, especially towards security? And the short answer is that's already shifted. That shift probably started, I'd say, 2 years ago at least, maybe more. But now with the cloud, you know, it's just, every time a technology changes, right, or we have some new technological medium, that's just, from a security person's perspective, that's just another point of exposure that we have to manage. It's more risk that we have to manage. So security actually, obviously, is becoming more and more important than ever. And not only that, but security people are also being saddled with all of these new regulations, HIPAA, so on and so forth, high tech. So yes. As far as other shifts, I think what is interesting to see is there was kind of a lull of application development. I think a lot of that had to do with outsourcing. But actually, a lot of that's coming back inside the borders, which I think is interesting and it's cool. Maybe some of that's because, you know, the unemployment rate was high and we're just kind of picking up some excess. I don't know, but I can tell you that there is definitely a trend towards picking up developers in country. So, you know, I'm glad that you asked that because the short answer is I don't know. I think that's where it comes back to the human interface, getting rid of the mouse, going back to touch. Those are all things that I think will give us minor improvements. But then we're talking about, you know, eye tracking and all these other things. We're getting very close to the point where, you know, we have to have essentially thought-controlled interfaces, and we just go, and information becomes what do you call it? Kind of a gist scenario. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I mean, if anybody wants to figure out how to do anything that they don't know currently how to do, what do? They just Google it, right? So what would be the easiest thing to do, short of having your own laptop or your own netbook or your own smartphone, to ask Google what to do? Well, have something in your head with an internal readout, right? So you're not actually, you know, scrolling or hitting your mouse to wake the computer up to go back to the instructions or, you know, to pull it back up. It's just there in your head. So we talked about, you know, chip implants and stuff like that. You know, it's probably inevitable, as scary, freaky as that might sound. I mean, to be able to keep up. Absolute deluge of information, I agree.